Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into something really fascinating, a place where ancient prophecy and our biggest modern fears totally collide. So, what if the book of Revelation wasn't just some story about the past or, a far-off fiery future? What if it was actually a coded message about our world, right now? Let's try and decode this thing together.
Okay, so picture the beast from Revelation, this famous symbol of incredible power and control. Well, one modern theological take on this doesn't see a literal monster or some future dictator. Nope, it sees something way more familiar, a massive, all-knowing, global digital system.
And it doesn't stop there. Then you've got the figure known as the Whore of Babylon. Traditionally, she's been a symbol for, decadent empires and false beliefs, but this new reading? It reimagines her as the embodiment of technological and spiritual corruption itself, that seductive but ultimately empty promise of progress.
And of course, the big one, the mark of the beast. This idea moves way beyond just tattoos or microchips. It suggests something much more systemic, an inescapable mark that's integrated into a global system of finance and identity, basically a tool for absolute control over our economic and social lives.
So you have to ask, where are these wild ideas even coming from? Because this isn't just some random theory from the internet. It's actually a pretty structured argument, laid out in a specific theological work that's trying to read a very ancient text through a very, very modern lens.
All right, let's pull back the curtain and find out the source of this really unique and kind of ambitious perspective.
So all of these concepts come from a single work titled the Documento Eschatologico Global, which pretty much translates to the Global Eschatological Document. And it's a huge paper that's trying to build a totally new prophetic framework for the 21st century.
Now that word, eschatology, it sounds complicated, but it's really not. It's just the part of theology that focuses on the end times, the ultimate fate of humanity. So this whole document is basically a work of modern eschatology.
And right at the heart of this document is one single central argument, an argument that it calls the gold thesis.
And you can see they have some pretty big ambitions here. The authors pitch the gold thesis as this really robust, groundbreaking interpretation. It's designed to be solid in its use of the Bible, super comprehensive, and also able to speak to both academics and church leaders at the same time. So, how in the world does this document get from an ancient text to ideas about digital surveillance? Well, it proposes a whole new method, a new lens for reading these old prophecies. They call this lens the updated prophetic hermeneutic key. Yeah, it's a mouthful, but you can just think of it like a decoder ring for the digital age. The core idea is that the symbols in Revelation were always meant to be understood in the context of the era when they finally came true.
And this new key, well, it unlocks 5 central themes that really form the backbone of their entire argument, building this complete, modern picture of what the apocalypse might look like.
So here you can see the 5 core claims laid out. It takes these iconic symbols, like the beast and the Whore of Babylon, and maps them onto modern tech, economics, and politics. Let's break down a couple of the really big ones.
The thesis kicks off with maybe the most famous image from the entire book of Revelation, pulling from chapter 13, verse 1, this vision of a powerful beast coming up out of the sea.
So in this view, that ancient, terrifying image of a monster with multiple heads isn't a literal creature. It's a metaphor for a complex, interconnected global system of digital control, one that brings together finance, surveillance, and information. It really taps into our deepest fears about data privacy and the power of algorithms. Next, the thesis looks at another major figure, described in chapter 17 as this woman of incredible wealth and influence who represents massive corruption.
And this really shows you their method. The Whore of Babylon isn't a specific city or empire anymore. Instead, she becomes a symbol for the corrupting influence of technology itself, its power to distract us, to create false values, and to concentrate power into a system that's spiritually hollow.
And finally, the thesis points to what it calls the profane human trinity. It argues that the beast's entire system of control is built on 3 inseparable pillars: global politics, centralized finance, and co-opted religious groups, all working together to stay in power.
Okay, so after looking at all these interpretations, what's the big picture? What is this document really proposing about prophecy itself?
Well, essentially, the gold thesis is arguing that the book of Revelation is a kind of prophetic code, filled with timeless symbols that only find their ultimate meaning in our digital age. It reframes the apocalypse not as ancient history or some distant event, but as an urgent warning for right now.
And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating final thought, doesn't it? Is this a unique insight into our specific moment in history, or is it possible that ancient texts like Revelation just act as a powerful mirror, reflecting the unique hopes, and especially the anxieties, of every single generation that reads them? Definitely something to think about.